Barb. We are racing here.
Cool. I'll put it on Facebook.
Yes. All right. You've been signed out. You must sign in again. Save changes to the file. I don't need that. Okay. And we are...
Right. At the moment, is there way to change it so we can see all of us? At the moment, it's just showing us one at a time on the live stream.
I got it. And then... let's see. Oh, that's what it is. No. Dang it. Oh, there you go. You just came up.
Cool.
I guess when we talk, we come up. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have it in gallery view on your Zoom meeting so you can see all of us?
Okay. View. More apps, chat, view, gallery. Okay. So gallery view I have on my end.
Cool. Hopefully they'll put it on the
live stream.
I'm just waiting for it to catch
It's
up.
on delay. It's on delay here, so.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. It's Dutch Grand Prix, isn't it?
The Max Verstappen Grand Prix. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't wait for half the country go crazy.
Not too far.
Man.
Zandvoort's not too far from Amsterdam, is it?
No, I've been there. I think last spring as well. Not at the trackside, just in the town. Really nice.
They've changed all the signposts I've seen, sort of.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on my end that I need to do if I have to mute myself or anything in regards to the video? Or
no, it should.
Yeah, there you go.
Fun. And then just remember to record to the cloud.
Okay. Let me see. You'll let me know when you're ready to go.
Right. Yeah, I'm just putting the thing up on Facebook right now.
Okay. Oh man. Two watching now. Okay. Yeah, it's on delay.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right.
I'm just hoping that's been posted. It has. Perfect. Right. If you two are ready, we'll get started.
Yeah, should be all right here.
Okay. Can we start recording, please, Philip?
No problem. Record to the cloud.
Okay. After no real racing in Belgium, it's not a long wait until we see some on-track action as Formula One returns to Zandvoort for the first time since 1985. Welcome to episode 129 of the Grid Talk podcast. My name is Louis Edwards, and I'll be your host for the 2021 Dutch Grand Prix preview. Joining me today are F1 podcaster Mathew.
Hello.
And sports journalist Mikael Kataja.
Hi.
Before we start the show, we have got a couple of shout-outs. So big shout-out to Jackie and Cora Define for giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you give us a 5-star review on iTunes, we will give you a shout-out at the start of the show. So while this may be a preview to the Dutch Grand Prix, we kind of have to address the kind of elephant in the room and the kind of the elephant in the F1 world right now. And I would love just to hear both of your opinions just on the Belgian Grand Prix, or lack thereof of a Belgian Grand Prix that we had last weekend. Mikael, I'd like to start with you. Just sum up sort of how you felt about the way it was handled, the way, the fact that we just went out for 2 laps just to to meet this minimum requirement.
Yeah, it was funny actually because I wasn't able to be attentive to the race or the lack thereof, the period when the race was supposed to be for too long. So I was just following updates on it on Twitter and everything. And I mean, yeah, it seemed like a mess mostly. I was talking to my family afterwards and they were like, yeah, we sat in front of the TV for 4 hours to watch 3 hours of cars driving behind a safety car, 3 minutes of cars driving behind a safety car. So of course it's a massive disappointment and it feels awful for the fans who's, sat there in the rain for that long. But I mean, also, you can't really do much with the weather. It would have been deadly dangerous for them to drive in the weather, I guess. So in the end, at least right call not to have an entire race in those circumstances, I guess. But yeah, something needs to change because we can't start giving up points for 3 minutes of action. This is a one-off, but I hope, and I'm hopeful that they'll change some rules at least, so it allows for something better for the fans than just this.
Fernando Alonso, Philip said he was the first of the suckers in that race. He was, he started the race P11. He was denied any chance of scoring points whatsoever. And, it's for people like Fernando Alonso and everyone, further down the grid, think of someone like Lando Norris starting P14. He would have probably had very good pace. They were all denied any chance of scoring points, any chance of competing. Is that racing? Is 2 laps behind the safety car, is that racing?
Louis, there's no way we could call what went on yesterday racing, unless you consider making Formula One cars into unlimited hydroplanes racing. That was a cool thing that existed and still exists in the back, whatever, here in the States. But back in the early 90s, that used to be a very cool thing. These cool boats that went really fast, but they're boats. You can't make Formula One cars into boats and have them drive around behind burnt. I mean, the reality is this. The winners of this race was Alan van der Merwe and Bernd Maylander. They were the 2 winners of first and second. Choose whoever you want. Third place was Max Verstappen because he was the first guy there. I'm fine. That may offend certain people, but the fact of the matter is it had nothing. His day, he won on Saturday. You mentioned Lando. Lando was the best, was fastest in Q1 and Q2. I mean, albeit he kind of was in a tire disadvantage going into Q3. He was the one that decided, I'm going to be the guy. And he was the one that sacrificed himself, basically, and sacrificed his whole entire weekend to destroy his race car in Eau Rouge and Raidillon, the way they've been destroying race cars in Eau Rouge and Raidillon for decades. But it's become more of a point of contention recently. Destroyed his whole entire weekend. He had no chance to score points. Alonso and the Alpine cars were not as fast, and in turn, they had no chance. And when you consider Fernando Alonso seemingly gains positions on the start, I would be aggrieved too. Not just the fact that I had to go out there and do that, albeit they're very well paid to do so, but when you have no chance, it doesn't justify a lot of what they went through, the nonsense of going and doing the initial sighting lap, Sergio Perez offing his car, somehow or another Red Bull weaseling their way into something within the the regulations. They have 8 trillion pages of regulations that has to be looked at after how they handled this, how the Sergio Perez situation was handled, how Lance Stroll put parts on his car that were different specification during the red flag. There were so many issues that existed with whatever they wanted to call the Belgian Grand Prix. The previous shortest race, I think, was the 91 Australian Grand Prix, which I think went 14 laps or 7 laps, something very, very short distance. But that was because of the same thing. No water drain, or they couldn't drain water. It was on a street course. Everybody was basically holding on for dear life. Senna was in front and he was waving his arms, and they called it. And it was the last race of the year. This is not that was just basically a parade because everything had been decided. If you're going to tell me that that whatever they called this race decides a world championship, it's going to be a problem, especially on the Mercedes side of things. But I'll digress on that, and we'll kind of move on to more positive things.
Yeah, it is strange because the amount of loopholes and regulations that were exploited during that that sort of period, and the amount of regulations that we realise the FIA don't have in place to sort of tackle something like this. Yeah, it's something that does need to be seriously looked at. And also, as you said, points were given out. Like Mikael, like Max Verstappen was given 12 and a half points, I think it is. It brings down his championship. Well, it brings him closer to Lewis Hamilton. But like, while he did put in the effort on Saturday, is there a case to say that he did? Well, none of the drivers who scored points actually deserve the points that they got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so odd that. Well, for me, the fact that Verstappen is catching to Hamilton, I'm happy about it pretty much because I just want it to be as tight as possible for as long as possible, obviously. But I can imagine teams like Alfa Romeo, for example, are going to be very disappointed by the fact that Williams has basically now run away with third last position on the team standings now, because there's no way, unless we get something like this again with another race and maybe Alphas are at the top, then maybe yeah. But other than that, like. Yeah, it's difficult to say about the points because they did put in the effort on Saturday. And should we then just waste it all and just call? Because this is the problem with the triple headers, is that you can't move the races really. I mean, technically, I guess it could have been an option to move it from Monday. There would have been time to get stuff to the Netherlands from Belgium. That's not too difficult, at least geographically. But yeah, it's something that they'll have to think about. And this is one of the big risks that probably, when considering future triple headers in countries where we may have this kind of stuff, that you have to completely push a race from one day to another if there is bad weather. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, as Phil said very well, if the championship is going to be decided to Verstappen by less than 4 points or less than 5 points, then this is definitely going to create some speculation.
Yeah, and sort of the final point, I'll bring Philip, you sort of back something you mentioned earlier about the regulations. The fact that there is a 2-lap minimum for points to be awarded in a race doesn't seem right, because they went out, did the 2 laps, but it wasn't a race. You can't have a race in 2 laps and then hand out points. Do you think that minimum needs to be raised? What needs to be done about that?
Yeah, I mean when it comes to with like, I'll just utilize the American examples, albeit the Formula One, what it is owned by an American company. NASCAR races, the main 3 series have to run half distance or 1 lap over half distance to be called an official race. IndyCar, I think, is similar to that. They haven't really had that issue on an oval in a long time. And even then, even on road courses, it's generally been conditions where they've been able to drive through. They need to basically, at a minimum, there should be 25% race completed. And if they're not able to complete 25%, you have to come back the next day, like Mikael was talking about. If it was raining 80% again today, the way things are right now in the current situation with COVID and everything, what are you telling me that in a month's time there isn't a gap? There isn't some weekend that they can't go back there. It'll be cold. It might be snowing. It'll be the luck of Formula One, the way things are. It'll be snowing. All right, fine. I mean, maybe you're just not going to run this race this year, but you have to at least give it a shot. There have been cancellations of the Indianapolis 500 for a week because they try to run it on the Sunday and then into a Monday. Both days it rained. They ran it the following week. They've done it's happened in NASCAR when there's been snow events. There has to be a contingency plan. I don't understand how you don't know how many laps you've completed in a race, and you don't have a contingency, and you can literally run 2 laps and say it's a race. If I'm one of the 75,000 people that went there yesterday and sat through that for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours, I would be livid. I would just be livid. It's just unbelievable how I mean, I know they come up with liabilities and all that, and I think Formula One has tried to cover themselves ever since the Indianapolis 6 debacle in 2005, but that was not good. Nothing about yesterday was good. You need to make a minimum. There has to be a half distance requirement to give to at least. I think there has to be at least a half distance requirement to give half points, and then 75% and above for full points. I think that's fair. You can't tell me that 2 laps is a race or 14 laps is a race. It isn't. Unless you're running a Formula 3 race, which that's how long they're going, then sure. But that's not a race. You can't dictate millions and millions of dollars of real money on that, which it could. I mean, to be fair, Mikael made the point. I mean, the point is Alfa Romeo ain't going to do anything most of the rest of this year anyway because Kimi Räikkönen's given up. You're going to go and have Williams. They've gotten a podium, 2 back-to-back double point scores. It's over. They're literally going to just coast the rest of the year. George Russell's just trying to wait on when Toto calls for the contract to put him in the other Merc. Other than that, Latifi's waiting on his new teammate. They're done. That's over. Their whole season now is back. They're back on 2022. You can't be telling me you're dictating real decisions, real money on what happened yesterday. But changes like dictating how long you have to go have to be made, and they have to be made immediately, so that what happened yesterday does not happen again.
Yeah, the thing is, probably spoke for what a lot of people are thinking. But we do have a race this weekend that we need to preview. So at Zandvoort, it's a track which Formula One was, of course, meant to go to last year, but due to all the COVID stuff, it never happened. But Mikael, it's back on the calendar this year. With Max having such a following, around the world, we go to so many races, and you just see this massive orange army. This is a big weekend for him. His first home Grand Prix. He's got to go out there and he's got to perform, and he's got to win, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think that's what he's also banking on, that he's going to take a home victory now that he gets the chance to do it. I mean, yeah, you already briefly mentioned it, but as we've seen in many of the races, especially in Europe, like the Orange Army is quite an insane fan base, if I would say so myself. I mean, we've all seen pictures on social media of the city of Zandvoort changing the 30 kph traffic signs into 33 for Max Verstappen and everything. So the entire, I feel like at least half of the country here is getting ready for the weekend. So yeah, it should be very exciting. I'm unfortunately not able to attend the race. I was part in a lottery for the tickets, but didn't win this time. Maybe next year. But yeah, I'm very, very looking forward to it. And yeah, I mean, the track looks good for Red Bull. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of twisty turns, not a lot of straight line speed necessarily. So I think Max is definitely going to be entering at least as the favorite. Of course, we'll see what happens on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, he definitely is the favorite. And like Mikael said, Philip, he's bang on it with it's tight. It's a twisty track. Tracks that seem to favour the Red Bull car. It does look like it is going to be a Red Bull victory.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why they went to Zandvoort. I think as much as anything, it was more of a circuit. that, it's more of got history with the cars versus, Assen, which is wider, is longer, and might have actually put on a better show, honestly, because it does an amazing job putting a show for motorcycles, and it has for decades. But I think for Red Bull, it worked out. The changes they've made have made it more of a it was already a very tight and narrow circuit anyway. But I think all the different adjustments to get it towards this whatever grade 1 specification make it a Max Verstappen special. I'm calling it the Max Verstappen Grand Prix because that's what it is. They're there for that reason. They want him to win. He's probably going to dominate like he dominated every session. He even wrecked one practice and he still won pole and he won the race. So the point is he'll get to do that at home and take over the points lead, which, for his base will be just due for what happened at they believe happened at Silverstone and all. So at that point, you have a reset, go to the Italian Grand Prix, 9 races to go, and you're basically back in a sense. It isn't the same way. It isn't 33-point lead like he had after the sprint race, but he's got the lead back. And it's up to Checo to go and consolidate and try to help them get back into the constructors standings because they're still behind Mercedes in that at the moment. Couple of non-point scores for Sergio Perez here recently, even with the extension he received into next year. He has to turn things around on his side of the garage to help Red Bull in their fight to possibly get both sides of the championship here this year.
Yeah, because it's going to be a difficult weekend for Mercedes. They're definitely going to be on the back foot for a lot of it. But I think a lot of us were, going into, the likes of Hungary thinking, Red Bull are going to be the quicker car. Mercedes were able to put up a fight. How much of a fight do you reckon Mercedes are going to be able to give Red Bull this weekend?
I think they're going to put maybe even a bit more effort than they planned before Belgium because of what happened and because of the fact that their lead got closed down on by Red Bull in both the drivers and constructors side. As Philip was already kind of hinting at, like a lot is going to be decided on Saturday just because of the fact that the track is so narrow. I don't have a doubt that there's going to be a couple very fantastic looking overtakes on Sunday, but in general, I believe that mostly the order that there is on Saturday is probably going to be pretty close to what's going to be on Sunday as well after the race. So I think Mercedes will have a couple tricks up their sleeve for the qualifying. Whether it's enough to beat Max, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to put at least one, but maybe both of Mercedes in front of Perez. But we'll see. Maybe Perez will pick up his pace as well.
Yeah, he might do. But we go to the other sort of Mercedes second drivers. A lot of people tend to refer to him, Philip. Bottas. This is George has just got a podium. He put his Williams in P2 in a very damp Spa. Bottas, after causing such a reckless incident in Hungary, not being able to really fight back in Spa, he's got a lot to prove this weekend. And like Mikael said, if he can be a part of a plan which separates the two Red Bulls, that it could put him in a bit more favour with Toto, which he certainly needs at the moment.
Yeah, he needs all the help he could get, whether he's going to drive a Mercedes or an Alfa or Williams or whatever, or if he's going to the DTM or whatever he's going to be doing. Because whatever version of Valtteri Bottas we have right now is not very good. He needs to go and get updates or whatever, needs to have the Windows updates done to him or something, because it's whatever it is isn't working too well. If he doesn't show up here these next 2 weeks, because Lewis is going to do whatever he can. That's just period. there's a reason why he's done what he's done. Whether people want to like it or not, that's their choice. Pure ignorance is the reason why you wouldn't give it at least some level of respect. But in the sense of Valtteri, I think this is a sign where he could go. People are gonna now. They're like, all right, it's over. You know, George just got the podium. He qualified second in a Williams. You know, it's over. So he's gonna go, and I think it might fire him up. You have some of these races coming up, the Russia race. You have some of these other racetracks that are good Valtteri Bottas racetracks. And now that he knows he's kind of got free reign, because he's real. I mean, yes, the third in points is still in play. His main job now is to be a blocker and a defender in a sense, to try to make sure that Lewis can get as many points as he can, number one. But number two, he's driving for his career. And maybe we see him, kind of reset and start back again here this weekend at a track that I think might be a good one for him. Austria has always been a track where he's kind of shown out well. That's a tighter circuit, so I mean, in Russia is one of the tighter, more Mickey Mouse tracks. This track is very tight. I think it'll be a circuit that will suit him better. And if he can go and have a good Friday and Saturday, there might be a discussion for Mercedes to at least consolidate points on that weekend before they go to Monza, where it might be a little bit more of a theoretical fair battle between them and Red Bull.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an important weekend for Valtteri Bottas. I think this race could define the rest of his season with how he gets on and what happens next, of course. Mikael, we'll now move on to McLaren. Done fairly well, on these sort of tighter tracks. Lando Norris getting third place in Monaco. He did get an amazing start in Hungary, but we didn't quite get to see how he would have raced there. But with Ricciardo having a better weekend in Belgium, Lando Norris, still putting in blinding performances. You got to favour, McLaren to just keep edging out this sort of the lead that they have on Ferrari.
Yeah, I would imagine that McLaren is going to increase their lead this weekend on Ferrari. Yeah, I'm not too certain about how well they're gonna do. I'm hesitant to raise them up to the same level as Red Bull and Mercedes as in terms of contenders for the pole. Though, I mean, Norris could do it. I would love to see him maybe get a pole, at least fight for the podium on Sunday. But yeah, it's difficult to say. I definitely think they are in that, middle part between the top two and then the, how should we call it, upper mid tier. Especially when it comes to Zandvoort. So I'm hopeful for their performance, and of course very happy seeing Ricciardo doing better in Belgium. So if he's able to now kind of make that his stable performance for the rest of the season, for the entire second half of the season, I think it's gonna look very good for them after this weekend.
That gap, Philip, between McLaren and Ferrari is 3.5 points. They were tied. I think they were tied after Hungary, but that battle between those two teams is so close. Every race matters, and for Ferrari, this they need to be getting ahead. They need to make sure that they're consistently beating both McLarens. But with Lando Norris in such good form and Ricciardo coming back, it could be quite difficult for them.
Yeah, I think the Ferrari, for what they've had at times this year, where they've been absolutely out to lunch like they were in France, and then they've had other races where you've had both one of them get on the podium, whether it was, what do you call Carlos at Monaco. You had one other one recently. You have Charles Leclerc at the British Grand Prix lead most of the race. The difference, though, is Lando, outside of getting, made into a 7-10 split at the Hungarian Grand Prix, he had scored every race this year. He had been in a top 6 basically every race this year. He is on another level. The McLaren Mercedes combination This whole combination, this car, everything is working for him. Last week, like 2 days ago, he was probably one lap away from possibly winning McLaren their first race since Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button were there, because they called that a race yesterday, because he would have qualified on pole. Instead, another rough weekend, but I think he's going to respond. And Mikael said it. They're going to respond. He's going to respond. I think Daniel Ricciardo needed the summer break. He needed a reset. He's going to come back. He's still behind. The qualifying was proof of that, but he responded late and he was able to make laps that put him in the conversation. He wasn't going to win if they had run a regular race, I don't think. He was going to be in the top 5 though, top 6 worst case. I think for Ferrari, though, outside of them putting a big lap together, one or both of them, it's going to be very difficult for them to cut down on the deficit. Going to the Italian Grand Prix, though, we'll see. But I think it'll be a difficult weekend for Ferrari, depending on how things go. It could be, you never know. It's like a dice roll with them from week to week, which team you're going to get and what the drivers are going to be able to do. But one thing I will say about Ferrari, though, that combination might be the best combination Ferrari has had in a long, long time, because they suit each other very well and they kind of play off of each other well. And I think they bring the things necessary to make Ferrari a better team as they get into the new regulations in 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, it's certainly is going to be a tough upwards climb for Ferrari, but Sainz and Leclerc have surprised us this year of just how well they've done together. So, they do definitely have the tools if McLaren do falter at any point. But we'll move further down the Constructors' Championship now to Alpine, Mikael. For Ocon, he got his win. We kind of just need to sort of forget about last race and sort of everything that kind of happened. It feels like this has been a 4-week break now. But Ocon, he's still going to be feeling good after that win. And Alonso, the master on the start, and on a track which is difficult to overtake, he gets a good start. He has the potential to then hold everyone up, and, get himself some good points, because Alpine just need to make sure that they're staying ahead of those AlphaTauris.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that's it. That's why I would hope that Fernando is able to get into Q3 on Saturday, because, well, he's had fantastic starts. So if he's able to pick up a few more positions from, let's say, starting 7th, 8th, gets up to 5th maybe, then if there's some pit stop strategy, he could be very much up there again, just like he was in Hungary as well, fighting for near podium. And yeah, I mean, Esteban, he's obviously, even not considering Hungary, he's had a good form this mid part of the season, but especially, Hungary was a jewel to his crown, I guess. Yeah, I'm not too certain though how much faster the Alpine car might be to the AlphaTauris. I feel like, well, at least Pierre Gasly should be quite close to them, if not even just inching out a little bit ahead of Alpine's, because I feel like both cars would fit this track relatively well. I don't think there is a massive deficit for either team from the layout of Zandvoort. Of course, if one of them ends up stuck in Q1, Q2, then just overtaking is going to be difficult. But I'm excited to see what happens. But yeah, definitely keeping an eye on Fernando.
Yeah, you brought up an excellent point. Getting stuck in Q1 has been an issue for AlphaTauri. Philip, Yuki Tsunoda just not always there, not always getting the most out of his car, and more often than not, AlphaTauri have had to rely on Pierre Gasly to get them the points, get them those high positions. And at a track like this, it's more important than ever that Tsunoda actually maybe finds his groove, gets out of Q1, and actually puts his car in contention for points.
Yeah, for Yuki to perform there, it would be a good opportunity for him to show up because he's been wildly inconsistent this year as a rookie, while Gasly, for all intents and purposes, has done a very good job this year, even though he theoretically got passed over again to get promoted. In the end, for AlphaTauri, though, they have there's races where they do qualify. At least with Gasly, he's usually up there, makes Q2 no problem. Generally, he's in Q3. Sonoda, you just don't know what you're going to get. He's the current day Takuma Sato for a reason. This track could suit him very, very well, and he could go off and he could make a Q3 appearance. I think it has some similar kind of feelings to Imola. So, and he's had plenty of time at Imola testing. Maybe he takes some of that experience and he's able to put that together. But they do need him to perform in the sense of, not only the drivers, but in the constructors, because with Alpine, you have Ocon, who's very, very motivated and happy after his first Grand Prix win. You have Alonso fully invested, looking forward towards next year and doing very well. They need both drivers performing. And I mean, in the case of Gasly, that's been the case most of the year. If Sonoda can put one together, though, this might be the type of track that he would be able to put one together and possibly help in regards to trying to close that gap to Alpine. But it will be, as we've said, and you've said, Louis, and Mikael as well, I think a lot of this will be dictated on Saturday to see what comes from Sunday itself.
Yeah, I think it's something that is the overarching sort of theme of this weekend. It is similar to the Monaco. So when you go race at Barcelona, it is a track which is difficult to overtake. There's only one passing zone, and get as high as possible on Saturday is going to give you the best chance on the Sunday. And Mikael, for Aston Martin, qualifying does tend to be quite difficult for them. And given that Vettel may have got 5 points from the last race, was disqualified from Hungary, points are more desperate than ever for Aston Martin. But with their qualifying not always being the best, it could be another either very low scoring or non-scoring weekend for them.
Yeah, I feel like Aston Martin has a very bad, it's like a hit or miss for them when it comes to Saturdays. The performance generally, they'll have done well if there is one car in Q3, and that just isn't enough even to fight AlphaTauri or Alpine. That's why they are about 20 points behind both of those teams. I'm really looking at Lance Stroll to kind of pick up his pace right now. I just looked it up and I was actually surprised that he's almost half of the points behind of Vettel, and that is including Vettel's disqualification in Hungary. So that statistic would look so much uglier for Stroll if that hadn't happened for Sebastian. So I really hope Lance is able to kind of get his act together and maybe push that Aston Martin to Q3 and then just hold it there. I feel like this track might not be particularly good on Aston Martin, obviously, and that's why if they have one stuck in Q1 and one is in Q2, or if they both get into Q2 but then drop or get eliminated there, it's difficult to imagine them getting any points unless something happens in front of them. So yeah, it might be a difficult race, but at least I hope that they'll get some points, because I just have some sympathy for the team.
Yeah, it is. It's far from the dream that I think they imagined when coming into this season. But now we move on to Williams for the before Alfa Romeo for the first time in quite a long time on this show. But George Russell misses Saturday, put his name made his name actually count for something in Belgium. But unfortunately, I think reality is it could be a lot harsher to them. They've had 2 great results, but it's unlikely that George is probably going to get into Q3 here, which means it's going to be unlikely that he's going to score points. And we know that Latifi, sort of in a regular qualifying, rarely gets out of Q1. So I think it could be do you reckon it's just going to be a bit more of a back down to earth weekend for Williams?
Yeah, I think that, after 2 great weeks and kind of hearkening back to the great days of Williams' lore in the 90s and maybe early 2000s, and even for a few years in the past decade, but more of the 90s and 80s and all that, it'll be a reality check because it's there's a lot of wind. That always seems to be a big problem for the Williams car. It's a very tight, narrow circuit, which is a hit or miss thing. George is going to do the best he can. Getting a Q2 appearance will be a positive. As you said, Louis, the Latifi, if it's a dry weekend, him getting through and getting through Q1 will be something. But yeah, I think these next couple of weeks will kind of bring them back down to earth. But I also think now that they have such a huge gap, as I mentioned earlier, now that they have such a huge gap on Alfa Romeo, it's more about consolidating, kind of watching where they are, and getting ready for next year, so that whoever's driving those 2 cars next year will have a better chance than what George Russell basically has had to drive for the last 3 years at Williams.
Yeah, with sort of Alfa Romeo, Mikael, they are now so many points behind. They're probably not going to be able to catch them, but surely something, now being 17 points behind or something like that, that's got to spur them to try and do something. It is clear that maybe both the drivers aren't, pushing as much as they can, but something does need to happen for them just to see if they have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, I feel like they're going to stop looking forwards and start looking backwards and thinking, well, we need to score some points, or if we get one more Joker race like this, Haas is going to leapfrog us as well. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the only interesting thing that comes from Alfa Romeo is regarding their driver news for the rest of the season. We know that they aren't necessarily now dictated, or I was reading that they aren't necessarily dictated anymore by Ferrari on picking either one of their drivers. So it might be interesting to see what happens with Giovinazzi. I mean, Kimi, of course, makes his own decision on whether or not to retire or keep his hobby up for one more year, which of course plays massively into the implications of what probably will be George Russell getting up to Mercedes and then Valtteri Bottas being out of a job. So I think that's the only real interest there's going to be. I mean, yeah, maybe we'll see Alpha fighting for the points, but they've had so many times that they're just stuck on P11, P12 on a Sunday. I just feel like this weekend, that's the best they can do. And yeah, for the rest of the season, they just better hope that Schumacher or Mazepin don't get a lucky strike like Williams did these last 2 weekends, and so that they don't end up last in the Constructor Championship.
Yeah, it'd have to be some weekend if Mazepin managed to get the points to leapfrog out.
Already fastest lap,
fastest lap yesterday.
Exactly. So
he is the fastest.
We never know.
He's the fastest driver behind a safety car. It's confirmed. But
Egghead does have pace.
Yeah, but we will move on to Philip for the final team, Haas. Can they get off the back row of the grid?
No. I would rather see the video of Mick driving his dad's car again, like they showed, which made me emotional. It was because of the way that Mick was, just how the joy he had and how excited he was. Like, literally give him any of his dad's cars when he was driving up until like 2000 through 2006. Any of those cars are better than the car he has to drive today. And I think he'd probably be on the pace. And no, I mean, whatever. Maybe Latifi helps or they get grid penalties or something. But in general, in regards to pace, there's no way they are going to get off the last row of the grid. And it's not for a lack of trying on the side of Mick. He's been trying very hard, making a lot of mistakes in the process. Egghead, drive slow. And, when you drive slow, you kind of get around stuff once in a while. And sometimes you're just in the way. And this is going to be an interesting weekend for them, especially with their pace disadvantage in a sense. They could play a role in the race itself in a negative, and especially Egghead. So we'll see what he does. And if he gets in the way of Max Verstappen and causes World War III and him not be able to get out of Zandvoort, that would be something. But I don't know. It's going to be a rough weekend. I think the rest of this season is just going to be a brutal stretch, as this whole entire year, to be fair, has been, or last couple of years has been for Haas. But it's not going to be pretty this weekend at Zandvoort for them.
Yeah, I think it's starting to become sort of rather predictable what to say for Haas. But now that we've gone through all the teams, time for podium predictions. So, Mikael, we'll start with you. Who is going to be top 3 for the Dutch Grand Prix?
Well, I already premised this up, so I will have to put Max on the top spot. And then I would go, so Verstappen first, Lewis second, and then we'll put Lando Norris on third. I feel like he's gonna, if he doesn't take it on Saturday, he can certainly jump 1-2 positions during the race. So Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris.
Philip?
I'll go with Verstappen and Hamilton 1-2. And in regards to third, I will say Valtteri Bottas. We'll go Ham Bot, which is a general easy podium, one that used to happen all the time. So I think that's what we will get this weekend.
I've got to stick with the same top 2. It's going to be Verstappen. I think it's going to be Verstappen on the top set, Lewis in second, but I'm going to say Sergio Perez is going to take that final spot. I think that Red Bull is going to be very competitive in both cars. So Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, and now bold predictions. And you can no longer say a Williams podium because that's happened. Williams double points, that's now happened. I think the only team
George Russell scoring points. We can't do that anymore. That's done.
It's all ruined. All our traditions are ruined on this podcast. But we'll start with you for a bold prediction for this weekend.
See, I can't even do the George Russell is going to score points anymore after I took it over from George. And he had said that for a year or two. Literally, I take it over. He gets his first points for Williams. And in theory, I would have said, I wouldn't have said he was going to finish second. But the fact of the matter is he was going to score points again, which, I mean, that would have been a farce if it hadn't been the way it was. But bold prediction. Let's see. So all the Williams stuff we can't do. So now we have to go pull one out. I'm really going out on a limb here because this is pushing something that this is going against a bunch of my beliefs here. And we just basically kind of went after Aston Martin. Vettel's Vettel. He's been doing good at times, and in other times it's just been kind of weird. His teammate, who, if you've listened to the show over many times I've been on, I'm not a fan of, but I'm going to go and say he's going to finish in the top 6.
Wow, that is bold. Mikael, what's your bold prediction for this weekend?
I mean, I guess we'll have to call this a bold prediction. I'm gonna say double points for AlphaTauri. I think Tsunoda is gonna get up there supporting Gasly on this one. I really hope so. At least it would be great to see him doing better again.
My bold prediction was always the opposite to George. It was always Latifi to score points, but I can't do that now. But I'm going to say my bold prediction. We'll go for Mick to get into Q2. I can go for that. Mick to get into Q2 on pure pace, no retirements. All 20 cars finished Q1, but yeah, that's going to be
Definitely bold.
My bold.
Are you sure he's not using the F2004 in that simulation there, Louis?
No, he's driving that the absolute dog of a horse. But yeah. So that is all from us today. We will have the reviews of both qualifying and hopefully a race this weekend. So make sure to keep an eye out for those. If you're listening to the show right now, we do live stream all of our shows on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe to the F1 Chronicle so you can see all the shows as we record them. And you can also ask us questions in the live chat. We're also available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Omni Studio, Verbal, as well as the F1 Chronicle website. Just search for the F1 Grid Talk podcast. We have a huge back catalogue of shows. So if you're stuck for something to listen to between now and the Dutch Grand Prix, we have over 100 shows for you to listen to, including interviews with Mario Zola from Pirelli, as well as more documentary-style shows about Tiregate, the Ayrton Senna, and the 1994 Benetton conspiracy. So make sure to check them out. Also, as I said at the start of the show, if you do give us a 5-star review on iTunes, then we'll give you a shout out on our next show. All feedback on our podcast is much appreciated. So thank you, Philip and Mikael, for joining me today.
Thanks, Louis.
Of course.
Had fun.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you later this week for the Dutch Grand Prix. Goodbye.
So let's, what is it? And how do I stop recording? Yes.
Yeah.
And then what is it? Stop live stream.